Part 1 Segment 1, Friday, 1 p.m, the last 48 hours. The call came just as Jamie Whitlock was pulling a stale cigarette from his last crumpled pack. The Manchester rain was hammering the window of his flat, the kind of icy drizzle that made it impossible to tell what time of year it was. He didn't recognize the number at first, an unfamiliar Yorkshire landline, but something in his gut tightened before he even answered. Mr. Whitlock. The voice belonged to a woman, worn down by years of soft-spoken bad news. This is Dr. Finch from Kirby Lonsdale Clinic. I'm calling about your grandfather. Arthur Whitlock. Jamie's stomach sank. He knew, of course, that Arthur wasn't doing well. The dementia had been getting worse for years. Lung cancer had piled onto it like a final nail. Still, hearing a stranger say Arthur's name in that tone made his chest tighten. What happened? He managed. There was a small pause on the line, short, but heavy enough to feel intentional. He has, at most, 48 hours. He's lucid for only seconds at a time. But he keeps calling a name. Yours, specifically. Another pause. Mr. Whitlock, he's been asking for you non-stop. Jamie swallowed hard. He forced a bitter laugh, because that was easier than letting the panic through. 48 hours, huh? He always had a flair for the dramatic. I think he needs you, Dr. Finch said gently. You should come quickly. When the line went dead, Jamie stayed seated for nearly a full minute, cigarette burning down between his fingers. He hadn't been back to Whitlock Farm in almost 8 years, not since the screaming fights with Arthur about writing, about responsibility, about damn fool city living. Now his grandfather was dying, and the only thing louder than Jamie's guilt was the sinking certainty that he'd run out of excuses. He stubbed out the cigarette, grabbed the duffel bag he never fully unpacked, and headed for his car. The drive north was supposed to take 2.5 hours, but halfway through the Dales, the weather turned vicious. Fog rolled across the limestone hills like something alive, swallowing the road, the hedges, the world beyond the windshield. The air tasted metallic, like cold iron. Jamie muttered to himself, perfect. Yorkshire Welcoming Committee. The radio signal died 5 miles before Malham Cove. A few minutes later, the engine sputtered. At first he thought it was the mist choking the air intake, but the dashboard blinked red, fuel line empty. What? No, 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 no. He slapped the steering wheel. I filled you yesterday. The engine gave a final cough before dying completely. The silence afterward felt unnatural, almost watchful. Jamie sat there breathing shallowly, surrounded by dense fog that pressed against the windows like damp cotton wool. Then he remembered the jerrycan Arthur had insisted he keep in the trunk 10 years earlier. Man always keeps a full can, Arthur used to say. Roads lie. Weather lies. Engines always lie. Jamie reached the can and frowned. It was half full. Enough to get to the farm, maybe, if he could get the car started again. But the fog was so thick the vehicle felt like a coffin on wheels. Beyond the can, wrapped in an oilcloth, was Arthur's old hunting shotgun, heirloom, he used to call it. Jamie didn't know why he grabbed it. Instinct maybe. Or something colder. Something evolutionary. Whatever the reason, slinging the shotgun over his shoulder made him feel a little less exposed. He stepped out into the fog. Walking the remaining 3 miles should have been simple, but the mist distorted everything. Sounds echoed strangely, his footsteps seemed to fall behind him instead of under him. And at one point he could swear he heard someone whisper his name. He stopped. The whisper stopped too. Just the wind, he muttered, though the air was too heavy and still for wind. Or you're finally going crazy. By the time Whitlock Farm came into view, dusk had already started its slow bleed across the sky, thick clouds turning the world bruised purple. The farmhouse looked smaller than he remembered, hunched between the sprawling barley fields and the boundary line of dry stone walls. A single upstairs light flickered weakly. Jamie knocked once, twice. No answer. He tried the door. It creaked open on its own. The smell hit him first: smoke, ash, and something sweetly rotten. "Grandad," he called out. A crackling sound answered him. He followed it to the living room. Arthur Whitlock, 80 years old, once broad-shouldered as an ox, now a hollow echo of himself, sat slumped in his armchair facing the fireplace. Flames licked up the chimney, and in his trembling hands were family photographs, old Polaroids, wedding shots, Jamie's school pictures. He was tossing them into the fire one by one. "Arthur! What the hell are you doing?" Jamie rushed toward him. Arthur turned slowly. His pupils were blown wide, swallowing the blue of his irises. His skin was so pale he looked sculpted from wax. For a moment, Jamie thought the old man didn't recognize him. Then Arthur whispered, "Jamie, you came." His voice rasped like dried leaves crushed underfoot. He held up a photograph, Jamie at 7, grinning with missing teeth, and stared at it with despair so raw it made Jamie flinch. "It's hungry," Arthur murmured, eyes unfocused. "It's always hungry." Jamie knelt beside him. "Who? What's hungry?" Arthur's fingers trembled violently as he dropped the photo into the flames. You're the last meal. My last damned mistake." Jamie grabbed his wrists. "Grandad, stop." Arthur's voice suddenly sharpened, cutting through his delirium like a blade. "You should not have come back here. Not tonight. Not with the fields waking." A log cracked in the fire. Jamie felt a chill creep up his spine. "Arthur," he said more gently, "the doctor called me. You're sick. You're confused." Arthur's gaze snapped to him, and for one terrifying moment, the old man's face was filled with pure clarity, no dementia, no drifting consciousness. Only fear. "Confused? Boy, I've been confused for 20 years, Arthur hissed. "But this I know. It wants you. It's claimed you. And I've run out of ways to stop it." Jamie felt a tremor in his hands. He forced a laugh, but it sounded strangled. "You're scaring the hell out of me, you know that." Arthur leaned close, breath cold against Jamie's cheek. "It's been 33 years since the last one," he whispered. "And you, Jamie, are the final Whitlock left." Then, with sudden force, Arthur shoved Jamie back, eyes filled with a desperate, childlike terror. "Get out of this house. Out of these fields. Before it's too damn late." Jamie stumbled, staring at him in shock. He wanted to argue, to demand answers, but Arthur suddenly went limp, sinking back into the chair as if deflated. His eyes rolled back. A wet, rattling cough ripped through his lungs, and dark fluid, too thick, too viscous to be blood, splattered down his chin. Jamie moved toward him, terrified. "Grandad." "Arthur." But the old man was slipping away again, retreating into whatever fogged corners of his diseased mind he now lived in. Jamie lowered his head, exhaling shakily. He placed a trembling hand on Arthur's frail shoulder. "I'm here," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." Behind him, the fire crackled louder, as if swallowing the last photograph with satisfaction. Outside, in the dark barley fields, something shifted, quietly, deliberately, like roots burrowing through wet soil. And somewhere within that shifting darkness, a faint voice echoed. "Jamie." Segment 2. Friday, 10 p.m., the basement, the journal, the tape. Jamie's hands wouldn't stop shaking. It wasn't just the shock of seeing Arthur burning photographs like they were cursed. It was the way the old man's voice had cut through the dementia, clear, cold, terrified. The kind of fear that didn't belong to a confused mind, but to a man who knew exactly what he was talking about. 33 years, last one, final Whitlock. The words gnawed at him like teeth, Jamie wandered through the farmhouse, trying to calm the thundering in his chest. The place looked frozen in time, thick stone walls, peeling wallpaper, antique clocks stopped at random hours. Dust swirled through the air in lazy spirals, disturbed by his footsteps. The fog outside pressed against the windows like a living thing. Beyond it, the barley fields looked darker than night, too still, too quiet. He found himself drawn toward the cellar door. He hadn't set foot down there since he was a child. Arthur had always kept it locked, muttering about family business, and things best left in the dark. But now the lock sat broken, as if someone, or something, had pried it open. Jamie hesitated. A faint draft escaped from the gap under the door, carrying with it the smell of soil, cold stone, and something older. Something like wet bark. He swallowed hard and pulled the door open. The staircase yawned downward, steep and narrow. He flicked the light switch, but nothing happened. Of course, he muttered. He took out his phone. No signal, but at least the flashlight worked. A narrow cone of pale light cut through the darkness, as he stepped down into the cellar. The basement. The cellar hadn't changed since Jamie was a boy. Stone walls, low ceiling, beams darkened with age. In the far corner sat Arthur's old workbench, covered in jars, rusted tools, boxes of ammunition, tangled wires, and a broken lantern. Dust lay thick across everything. But something new stood out. A leather-bound journal, sitting right in the middle of the workbench, untouched by dust, as if someone had placed it there only moments ago. Jamie approached slowly. The book was old. Very old. The cover was cracked and stained, bound with cowhide polished by generations of hands. A faint symbol was carved into the leather, an owl-like shape surrounded by roots curling into a spiral. Jamie's heartbeat stuttered. He had seen that symbol before. When he was 6, Arthur had caught him drawing it in the dirt behind the barn. Jamie had said he saw it in the field, moving. Arthur had slapped him so hard his cheek bled, then forbade him from ever mentioning it again. Jamie didn't open the journal yet. His hands hovered over it, trembling. Another object sat beside it. A plastic cassette tape. The label, written in shaky marker, read, Whitlock Field, 1981. Arthur plus Clara. Jamie felt a cold jolt down his spine. His grandmother Clara died in 1981. Died in the fields. Arthur never talked about it. The coroner had called it a tragic accident, but Jamie had seen the look in Arthur's eyes during the funeral. That wasn't grief. They were eyes haunted by something that wouldn't let him sleep. Jamie found an old tape player on a shelf. Dust coated the surface, but the battery compartment was clean. There were already batteries inside. Of course there were. Everything felt staged for him. Placed. Prepared. He shoved down his rising panic and slid the cassette in. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a harsh click. A hiss of static. And a young voice, Arthur's voice, but decades younger, filled the basement. The tape, 1981. Clara, please don't go in there. Arthur's voice trembled with desperation. It's not her. It looks like her, but it's not her. Jamie froze. A woman's voice, Clara, answered, distant, muffled. Arthur, she's crying. A little girl shouldn't be alone in the field. Arthur shouted, voice raw with terror. She's not a little girl. Don't look at it. Don't look at its eyes. A shriek tore through the speakers, inhuman, lead, like wind forcing its way through the throat of something that did not know how to scream. Jamie clamped a hand over his mouth. On the tape, Arthur's breathing turned frantic. Clara? Clara, answer me. CLA. A bone-chilling sound cut him off. A whisper. Soft. Childlike. Echoing from a throat too deep to be human. I see you, Arthur. And then a howl, wet, crushing, like something snapping bone. The tape ended abruptly. Jamie staggered back, knocking over a jar. It shattered on the stone floor, echoing through the cellar. He turned off the tape player with trembling fingers. "What the hell happened to you, Grandad?" he whispered. His heart hammered so loud he could hear blood roaring in his skull. He forced himself to open the journal. The journal, 1847. The first page was written in ink so dark it looked almost like dried blood. Whitlock Family Chronicle, Elias Whitlock, 1847. Jamie blinked. Elias Whitlock was his great-great-great-grandfather. He began reading. "The land here is beautiful, but barren. God has abandoned these fields. No rain, no growth, no hope. The village says the land is cursed. They are right. Tonight, I met the creature they fear. It rose from the soil as if the earth itself were giving birth. No form. Only roots, shifting like tendons, woven into the shape of a man without a face. It calls itself the Hollow. Or, in the old tongue of the Wolds, Hollow Wold. It offered me life. It promised my crops would grow, my family would prosper, and my lineage would never starve. In exchange, it asked for one thing. A Whitlock soul, every 33 years, to feed the fields, to keep the land fertile. I accepted. I had to. My children were dying. May God forgive me. For the Hollow never will." Jamie's blood chilled. He flipped the page. Tonight it took the first. "My brother Samuel." He followed the voice of our dead mother into the field. "When I found what was left of him, the roots were still drinking." Jamie slammed the journal shut, his breath coming fast and shallow. He pressed a hand to his forehead. "This is impossible. This is insane." But the tape, the journal. Arthur's terror. Everything was pointing to one truth. The Whitlocks had been feeding something for generations. And now, if Arthur was right, Jamie was next. The cellar suddenly felt much colder. The hairs on his arms stood up. Then he heard it. A soft, dragging sound. Above him. On the floorboards of the living room. Slow. Deliberate. As if something was crawling across the wooden planks. Jamie's throat tightened. Then. Bang. Something slammed against the ceiling. Dust rained down onto his shoulders. The entire house shuddered. Jamie grabbed the shotgun from the workbench, Arthur's heirloom, loaded with 2 shells. He took a step toward the stairs. The dragging sound stopped. Silence swallowed the house. Jamie whispered into the dark, "Grandad." A voice answered. But it wasn't Arthur's. "Jamie, help me." It was a woman's voice. Broken. Soft. Familiar. Jamie's heart turned to ice. It was the same voice he had heard on the tape. Clara Whitlock. Dead since 1981. He tightened his grip on the shotgun and forced himself up the stairs. Each creaking step felt like it might collapse. At the top, he reached for the door, breathing hard. The voice came again, right on the other side. "Jamie, it hurts." He braced himself and opened the door. Segment 3. Friday, 23:30, 2 o'clock. The first night, the mimic at the window. Jamie pushed open the cellar door. The living room was dark except for the low red glow of the fire. Shadows jittered against the walls, stretching long and thin, like skeletal fingers trying to climb out of the brickwork. The house felt too quiet, so quiet that the crackle of the last burning photograph sounded like a gunshot. He lifted the shotgun to his shoulder. "Hello," he whispered. Nothing moved. For a moment he thought he'd imagined the voice entirely, that the journal and the tape had driven him into some sort of hallucination. Then he saw the window. A pale shape stood just outside the glass. His breath caught. He stepped closer, barrel raised. The figure solidified in the fog, long hair stuck with dew, a nightgown clinging to her thin frame, bare feet sinking slightly into the soil outside. Her head was lowered, chin resting against her chest, as if she were too weak to hold it up. Jamie's lungs felt too small for his body. He didn't need to see the face to know who it was. "Grandma." "Clara," he whispered. The figure slowly lifted its head. Her face emerged from the fog, and Jamie nearly dropped the gun. It was her. Exactly as she appeared in the only surviving photo, long dark curls, deep-set eyes, narrow soft features. But wrong. Too pale. The skin looked stretched taut under the moonlight, like a mask pulled over bone. Her lips parted, and her voice came out broken, wet, whisper thin. "Arthur is dying, Jamie." Jamie staggered back a step. "No," he gasped. "You're not real. You can't be real." Clara tilted her head. "I'm here for him, for both of you." She raised her left hand, and in it, she held something. Jamie's blood turned to ice. It was a skull. Small. Cracked. Weather-worn. Fleshless. She held it gently, lovingly, like a mother cradling a sleeping child. The skull's jaw hung open in a crooked, eternal scream. Jamie's breath caught in his throat. His mind fought to reject what he saw, every instinct screaming this was impossible, this was wrong. Clara's voice slithered through the glass again. "Come outside, Jamie. Please. He needs you." Jamie almost dropped to his knees. "No, no, no." She stepped closer. That was when he saw it. Something pulsed beneath her skin, tiny shifting movements, like roots twisting under the surface. The more she moved, the more her body seemed to unravel into strands of fibrous plant matter. She whispered, "Let me in." And her jaw stretched, too wide, cracking at the hinges. Jamie screamed. Instinct, not thought, pulled the trigger. The shotgun erupted like thunder. The window exploded inward, shards flying across the living room. Clara's figure jerked back, but she didn't fall. She didn't buckle. Instead, her entire form wavered, as if made of smoke and soil and memories. Her skin tore open, splitting into black vines. Her face sagged, melting into a tangled mass of roots and dirt. The skull dropped from her hand and shattered into pieces that looked more like rotted wood than bone. The thing that wore her shape collapsed into a heap of damp soil, black roots, and writhing tendrils. A stench hit Jamie, loam, rot, cold wet earth. He stumbled back, gasping, hand clamped over his mouth. "Oh God, oh God." Behind him, a low cough rattled through the air. Jamie froze. "Arthur." He spun and raced toward the hallway where the coughing came from. "Grandad. Grandad." He found Arthur slumped on the floor, trying to pull himself up using the wall. His face was grey. A puddle of dark, tar-colored blood spread on the wooden floorboards beneath him. Jamie dropped to his knees. "Oh my God, Arthur, what happened?" Arthur's fingers dug into Jamie's coat. His voice was barely a whisper, each word scraping through his throat like broken glass. "It knows, you found the journal. The tape. It knows." Jamie tried to lift him, but Arthur's body shook violently. He coughed again, this time spraying the floor with a thick glob of black fluid. Jamie felt panic twist his insides. "We need a doctor." "There's no doctor." Arthur's voice cracked. "Only the land. Only it." His eyes opened, bloodshot, terrified, lucid. "You need to understand, Jamie. You brought the gun. It knows you brought the gun. It won't wait for sunrise. It's coming tonight. Jamie felt the air shift, cold, electric. Like the house itself was inhaling. Arthur tightened his grip. You have one chance. One shot. Jamie swallowed hard. At what? Arthur's head bobbed weakly toward the window where Clara's mimic had stood. The oak tree, at the center of the field. Its heart. Burn it. Blast it. Destroy it. Jamie's mind reeled. Grandad, I don't even know where to. Jamie, Arthur's voice softened suddenly. I'm so sorry. Something in his tone made Jamie's chest ache. Made the terror momentarily fade. For what? Jamie whispered. For bringing you back here, Arthur said, tears forming in the corners of his dimming eyes. For letting it choose you. For every year I stayed quiet hoping it would forget. Jamie shook his head violently. Don't say that. You didn't do anything. I bargained, Arthur croaked. In 1981. Your grandmother, it should have taken me instead. Jamie froze. Arthur's grip loosened. His head tilted back. A long, slow breath rattled out of him. Grandad. Arthur's eyes fluttered. Don't let it win. Jamie held onto him, heart in free fall. But Arthur wasn't gone yet. Not fully. His chest still moved, barely. One breath every few seconds. Jamie pressed his forehead to Arthur's. I'm not leaving you, he whispered. Not again. Suddenly, something slammed against the front door. Jamie jerked up. Another slam. Harder. The wood cracked. A voice drifted through the walls. Jamie. Not Clara's. Not any woman's. This one was deeper. Wrong. Layered with whispers like dozens of throats speaking at once. A cold sweat broke across Jamie's skin. Oh God. The door bulged inward, the frame splintering. Jamie dragged Arthur toward the kitchen, desperate to hide him somewhere, anywhere, but the old man coughed violently, collapsing into Jamie's arms. Take the fuel, Arthur rasped. Take the gun. When the field calls, don't answer. Another slam. This one snapped the bottom hinge. Jamie grabbed the jerry can from beside the stove. The door let out a final shriek as the wood began to split. Jamie spun, shotgun raised. Something pressed its face against the jagged gap in the door. A smile, too wide, split across a shifting, root-filled face. Jamie fired without thinking. The blast tore another hole in the door, but the creature's laughter filled the house, dry, rustling, like wind through dead leaves. Jamie backed away, panting. He turned to Arthur again, but the old man had slumped over entirely now, eyes half-lidded, breath barely there. No, Jamie whispered, voice shaking. Please. He grabbed Arthur's hand. It felt cold. A sudden silence fell outside. No wind. No footsteps. No whisper. Then. Tap. On the window. Jamie forced himself to look. A small silhouette stood there. A child. A boy of about 10. Hands pressed to the glass. Face pale. Eyes wide. Jamie's breath left his body. Because the boy was him. Jamie, age 10. His own child form stared back at him with empty, hollow eyes. The mimic tilted its head. Smiled. And whispered. Come out and play, Jamie. Part 2, Segment 1. The door that shouldn't be there. The night pressed against the windows of the abandoned service tunnel like a living thing, thick and suffocating, swallowing the last traces of daylight. Alex moved through the dim corridor with halting steps, his flashlight cutting a narrow path through decades of dust. Every sound felt amplified in the silence, his own breath, the brittle crunch of debris, the occasional groan of the aging facility settling under its own forgotten weight. He had returned. He shouldn't have. Every rational part of him screamed to turn around, to go back up the ladder, and seal the hatch and pretend none of this existed anymore. But after what had happened to Ethan, after the things Alex had seen, there was no turning back. Answers were buried here. He felt them like a pulse beneath the concrete floor. The beam of his flashlight trembled as he scanned the tunnel walls. The facility had been shut down in the early 90s, left to rot, its purpose erased from records, its workers reassigned or quietly dissolved into the bureaucracy. But the deeper Alex descended, the more he realized the place had not been abandoned, not really. Something had continued operating. Something had kept moving through these halls long after the world forgot about them. It started with the humming. Soft, at first. So faint he assumed it was the blood pounding in his ears. But as he took another step, the hum grew clearer, low, mechanical, almost like the resonance of a transformer. Yet there was no power here. No working generators. No active equipment. Still, the air vibrated with an energy he could feel in his teeth. He pressed on. The tunnel opened into a wide loading area littered with rusted metal barrels and broken pallets. The air smelled of oil and something sharper, ozone, like lightning trapped in the walls. His flashlight fell across a series of footprints in the dust. Large, deep, not fresh, but not old either. Ethan's? Maybe. Or maybe something else had passed through here recently. A metallic clang echoed from somewhere ahead. Alex froze. The beam of his flashlight darted across the room, landing on a cluster of overturned lockers. Just beyond them, an industrial door stood partially ajar, thick steel, reinforced with bolts, the kind of door you'd expect to see in a military-grade containment wing. And yet it had no power locks. No labels. No instructions. Just a blank metal surface marred by deep scratches, as if someone, or something, had clawed at it in desperation. Alex swallowed hard. He approached slowly. The humming grew louder near the door, a steady vibration pulsing beneath his fingertips when he brushed the frame. He hesitated. Part of him expected the surface to be ice cold, but it radiated warmth, almost like skin. A sudden memory struck him like a blow. Ethan's shaking voice on the phone that night. "There's a door down here that shouldn't be here." "What do you mean?" Alex had asked, pacing his apartment. It's wrong, Alex. It wasn't in the schematics. And the wall around it, it's like it just appeared." "Appeared?" "Yeah. Like it wasn't built. Like it wasn't made." That call was the last time Alex had heard Ethan's voice. Until the scream. A shiver crawled down Alex's spine. He pushed the door open. A gust of warm air rushed out, tinged with the smell of scorched metal and something organic, something that should not have been alive. His flashlight flickered, struggling to penetrate the blackness beyond, but the room seemed to swallow the light, hungrily, greedily. Alex stepped inside. The floor felt uneven beneath his boots, not like concrete. His flashlight stabilized and the beam fell across a massive chamber lined with shapes he couldn't identify, tall, skeletal frames draped in cables and tubing, like metallic rib cages pulled from some mechanical beast. And then he saw the pods. 6 of them, arranged in a semicircle. Large enough to fit a grown man. Their surfaces pulsed with faint orange light, as though illuminated from within by a dying ember. The glass was fogged from the inside. Alex stepped closer, heart pounding. He wiped a trembling hand across the first pod's glass. A face stared back at him. Not Ethan's. Not human. The features were wrong, stretched, elongated, the mouth too wide, the eyes too deep set, the skin slick and translucent like something grown rather than born. Tubes entered its throat and chest, pumping a viscous dark fluid that sloshed sluggishly with each beat of the machine's failing pulse. Alex stumbled backward, choking down a scream. His flashlight swung wildly, catching glimpses of the other pods. Each one held a creature more horrifying than the last, variations of humanity twisted into shapes that defied anatomy. Some seemed incomplete, as if abandoned halfway through some terrible process. Others looked like they had tried to escape, their hands pressed against the glass in silent agony. The humming intensified. The light inside the pods flickered. Then, as if sensing Alex's presence, one of the creatures opened its eyes. A wet, clicking sound filled the chamber. Alex froze. The creature's head tilted slightly, as though listening for him. The tubes attached to its chest rattled with sudden movement. Its hand, long, spindly, jointed wrong, pressed against the glass, leaving streaks of dark fluid. And then the glass began to crack. One of the veins of fracture shot outward like lightning. Another. Another. The pod convulsed. No, Alex whispered. He backed away, nearly tripping over a coil of thick cables on the floor. The humming shifted pitch, becoming shrill, chaotic. The other pods began to vibrate, their lights strobing frantically, casting the room into a nightmare of shifting shadows. Alex darted toward the exit. Behind him, the first pod exploded. A spray of fluid hit his back, hot, foul, stinging through his clothes. He didn't look back. Didn't breathe. Didn't think. The screech that erupted behind him was not human, not animal, not anything from this world. It tore through the air like a blade, rattling his bones. He sprinted through the door. The instant his foot crossed the threshold, the humming stopped. The sound cut off so abruptly it felt like the entire facility had inhaled at once. Alex spun and slammed the steel door shut. The corridor fell into dead, suffocating silence. He held his breath. Nothing. Not a scrape. Not a hiss. Not a footstep. It was like the creatures had never existed. Like the room had swallowed the noise whole. Alex staggered backward, panting. His hands trembled violently, the flashlight beam jittering along the walls. He turned to run. And stopped dead. At the end of the corridor stood a figure. Still. Unmoving. Watching. Alex lifted the flashlight. The beam illuminated pale skin. A familiar face. Ethan. But wrong. So wrong. Ethan's eyes were glassy, too wide, reflecting the beam like an animal's. His body twitched in small, unnatural spasms, as though strings beneath his skin were being pulled by an unseen puppeteer. Ethan. Alex whispered. Ethan's head tilted at an impossible angle. A wet crack echoed down the hall. Then another. Then a smile stretched across Ethan's face, slowly, painfully, until it nearly split his cheeks. Alex, the thing whispered, with Ethan's voice layered over something deeper, something ancient, something hungry. Alex stepped back. The creature took a step forward. And the lights in the corridor flickered violently, plunging everything into strobes of black and white, each flash revealing Ethan closer, closer, closer. Alex turned and ran. Segment 2. The thing wearing Ethan's skin. The hallway warped as Alex ran, every flicker of dying fluorescent lights stretching the shadows into grotesque, living shapes that clawed at the edges of his vision. His boots slammed against the concrete floor, echoing down the corridor like gunshots. The air tasted metallic, charged with the same electricity he felt pulsing beneath the walls. He didn't dare look back. He didn't need to. He could feel it behind him, Ethan, or the thing that had hollowed out his friend like a suit and crawled inside. The facility shifted around him the way it had the night Ethan disappeared. Corridors that were straight seconds ago bent subtly to the left, doors seemed to reposition when he wasn't looking. It was as if the walls were breathing, expanding, contracting, guiding him somewhere he didn't want to go. A sharp metallic clatter echoed from behind. Alex pushed harder. He darted around a corner, and nearly slipped on a patch of stagnant water pooling beneath a ruptured pipe. Steam hissed from the break, filling the air with a hot, damp fog that clung to his skin. Through the shifting haze he spotted a service elevator at the far end of the hall, rusted, but intact. A miracle. His fingers punched the call button. No response. He hit it again. And again. Come on. Come on, come on. The light above the elevator flickered once. Then went dark. A cold breath whispered along the back of his neck. Alex spun. The fog swirled, parting like curtains. Ethan stood in the center of the hallway. Still. Silent. His head hung forward slightly, as if the weight of his skull were too much for a human spine to support. His hands dangled at his sides, limp, boneless. One of his shoulders twitched, followed by a slow, unnatural roll of his collarbone beneath the skin, like something inside was adjusting itself. Ethan, Alex whispered, voice hoarse. If you can hear me, if anything of you is still in there, please. For a split second, Ethan's body froze. Then, in a jerking, stuttering movement like a marionette being yanked upward by its strings, his head snapped up. The smile stretched across his face again. Too wide. Too full of teeth. Alex, he whispered. But the voice wasn't his. The mouth formed the word, yes, but the sound came from deeper in his throat, distorted, layered with a frequency that made the lights overhead flicker violently. Alex backed up until his shoulders hit the cold steel of the broken elevator door. Ethan, or the thing, took a step forward. Each movement was worse than the last, bones shifting, limbs bending slightly wrong, joints crunching under unseen pressure. His foot dragged behind him with a wet scrape. His chest rose and fell in sharp, ragged bursts that did not match the rhythm of speech or breath. You didn't answer, the thing said. He asked for you, Alex. Alex's stomach twisted. Ethan had called him that night. Begging him to come. Begging him not to let him die alone. And Alex had hesitated. He swallowed, forcing air into his lungs. What do you want? Ethan's jaw twitched violently. His face spasmed, stretching the skin at odd places. When he spoke, fluid dripped from the corner of his mouth. Not me, the thing hissed. We. A sound rose from the hallway behind Ethan. A low, resonant thrum. The same mechanical humming from the pod chamber. Except now it wasn't mechanical at all. It was breathing. Alex didn't think. He just dove sideways as Ethan lunged, the creature's fingers grazing the air where his throat had been a half second before. Alex hit the ground hard, pain shooting up his shoulder as he rolled. Ethan crashed into the elevator door with bone-breaking force, skin tearing against metal, ribs cracking audibly. But Ethan didn't fall. Didn't react. Didn't feel. He simply turned, slowly, involuntarily, like his head was being forced around by invisible hands, until his face aligned with Alex again. The smile widened. Skin split at the corners. Alex scrambled to his feet and sprinted toward the maintenance stairs at the opposite end of the corridor. Behind him, Ethan moved. Not running. Not walking. But sliding across the floor in short, jagged bursts as if reality was skipping frames. The stairwell door was old, corroded by decades of neglect. Alex slammed into it with his shoulder. The metal screeched but held firm. He shoved harder, ribs aching, pushing until it finally gave way and swung open. He stumbled inside and immediately threw his weight against it. A second later. Bam! The force of Ethan's body hitting the door rattled the entire frame. Alex gripped the handle, holding it closed with trembling arms as the creature slammed into it again. And again. Each impact bent the hinges outward with a groan. Dust rained down from the ceiling. A sharp crack split the wood around the frame. The door wouldn't hold long. Alex backed toward the stairs, chest heaving. For a brief moment, the banging stopped. Silence. Then, a voice from the other side. Perfectly calm. Perfectly steady. Alex. He froze. You should see what he saw, the creature whispered. You should see what we are becoming. Alex stumbled backward, nearly tripping down the metal stairwell. Then the door exploded inward. Ethan's broken body burst through the frame, collapsing onto the landing in a wet heap before lurching back upright in one horrifying, unnatural motion. Alex turned and barreled down the stairs, gripping the railing to keep from falling as he descended the spiraling metal structure. His footsteps echoed violently in the confined space. Above him, Ethan moved with impossible speed, slamming against the railing, limbs contorting as he plunged downward in erratic leaps. The stairwell suddenly shook. A horrible realization struck Alex. He wasn't chasing Alex. He was driving him downward. Toward something. Toward them. Alex took the next flight 2 steps at a time, heart pounding so loud he could barely hear anything else, until a new sound cut through the echo of his own pulse. A door. Opening. Below him. Alex skidded to a stop on the landing, breath catching in his throat. Another figure stepped out from one of the lower floors. Tall. Slender. Its movements smoother than Ethan's, but wrong in a different way, like its body was trying too hard to mimic human posture. Its face was obscured in shadow. But Alex could make out its arms, too long, and its fingers, too thin. Behind him, Ethan descended another flight with a bone-snapping thud. Alex was trapped. One creature above. Another below. The one on the lower landing lifted its head. Its voice was a perfect copy of Ethan's. Come back, it whispered. We are not done. Alex looked over the railing. The central shaft of the stairwell dropped at least 5 stories. His stomach twisted. He'd die if he jumped. But staying meant something much, much worse. He heard Ethan's wet feet slap the metal steps above him. The other creature began climbing upward with slow, deliberate steps. Alex moved to the railing. His hands curled over the cold metal. He inhaled once. Then he climbed over. He didn't give himself time to think. He pushed off. The air rushed past him. A scream tore from his throat as he fell, weightless, helpless, until his body crashed into the net of thick industrial cables stretched across one of the lower levels. Pain detonated through his ribs. Breath left his lungs in a choking burst. He lay stunned for a moment. Then he heard it. Above. Ethan. Shrieking. Not in pain, but in fury. The creature at the lower landing reached the railing and peered down at him, its head slowly rotating. Alex rolled off the cables and hit the concrete floor below. His legs buckled, but he forced himself upright. The corridor at this level was different, wider, colder, lit by emergency bulbs that buzzed with sickly red light. He staggered into the hallway. Behind him, the creatures began descending. No more hiding. No more running in circles. They were driving him somewhere. And whatever it was awake. Segment 3. Voices behind the walls. The red emergency lights hummed in Alex's ears, vibrating against his skull in a slow, steady pulse. His legs felt like lead, but he forced himself to move forward, each step measured, careful, terrified of what might be around the next corner, or worse, behind the walls. The corridor seemed to stretch forever, bending subtly in impossible ways. The fluorescent bulbs flickered sporadically, casting his own shadow, as a grotesque doppelganger, twisting with every step. For a moment, He thought he glimpsed another figure moving just beyond the corner, then, nothing. Then the whispers began. At first, faint, almost polite, like a forgotten voice calling from childhood memories. Then louder, insistent, overlapping, dozens of voices layered together. One spoke in his mother's gentle tone. "Alex, why did you leave us?" He froze, his breath hitching. The voice was perfect, every nuance identical to how she had sounded when he was 10. But she had been gone for over a decade. I didn't leave anyone," he stammered, but the whisper came again, faster, overlapping, more insistent. "You left us, you left Ethan, you left everything." Alex's head spun. The walls seemed to close in, breathing with him, pulsating with the rhythm of his own panic. He grabbed the nearest pipe to steady himself, but the metal was slick, warm, almost alive. He looked down. Veins of red liquid pulsed beneath the surface, like blood running through skin. He recoiled, but the hand of the corridor itself seemed to tighten around him. Then a door appeared. It hadn't been there before. Rusted steel, scratched, with a small window at eye level. Through it, he could see a faint orange glow. A figure moved inside, bending, twisting. He couldn't make out a face, yet somehow he knew it was Ethan. "Alex?" The voice called again, but something was wrong. The tone wasn't desperate, wasn't pleading. It was amused. Mocking. Alex pressed his palm against the door, but the glass rippled like water. His reflection stared back at him, only it wasn't him. The face in the glass was older, gaunt, eyes hollow, lips stretched into a permanent, twitching smile. He recoiled. The reflection smiled wider, tilting its head as though testing him. Then the whispers came again, closer, inside his own skull. They weren't coming from the door now, they were everywhere. Each syllable, each accusation, each lie he'd told himself his entire life echoed inside his head. "Coward! You should have helped. Why did you leave him to die?" Alex dropped to his knees, pressing his hands over his ears, but the voices didn't stop, they multiplied. Hundreds of them. Some were Ethan's, some his mother's, some distorted, unrecognizable, but each one clawed into him with intimate knowledge, personal knowledge, memories he had never shared with anyone. And then the air shifted. The hum of machinery returned, but softer now, deliberate, like a heartbeat. The walls began to throb with it, subtly, rhythmically. With each pulse, Alex's own memories began to twist, replaying wrong, like film reels running backward. He saw his mother smiling at him in the kitchen, but her eyes were too wide, too dark. He saw Ethan falling from the elevator shaft, but when he hit the floor, it wasn't blood that spread, it was black smoke. He saw himself leaving the facility that night, abandoning his friend, but the corridors around him rippled, folding in impossible angles so that the act felt eternal, impossible to undo. Alex screamed. The sound bounced back from the walls, distorted, returned to him in whispers and giggles and sobs. Then he realized something. He wasn't alone. Not physically, maybe. But every memory, every fear, every regret, manifested. The facility had learned him. Learned how to hurt him without lifting a hand. He realized with cold horror that Ethan, or the thing wearing his face, was only part of it. The rest was all of him. Every secret, every guilt, every mistake, now turned outward as an instrument of terror. The orange glow intensified. The door quivered. Alex forced himself toward it, trembling, every step a battle against the nausea threatening to drag him down. He pressed his face against the glass. Inside, Ethan, or the thing, was gone. In his place, a tableau of memories, of people he had loved and lost, frozen in grotesque parodies. His mother, his childhood dog, his first love, each face stretched, twisted, smiling at him in silent accusation. A whisper slithered into his ear. "You can't save him. You never could." Alex recoiled, staggered backward. His flashlight slipped from his grasp, skittering across the floor. When it stopped, its beam illuminated something impossible, his own body, hunched and twisted, walking beside him. But the face, it was Ethan's. The mimic's. The monster. His own doppelganger. Alex screamed. Ran. The corridor bent. Or maybe he bent. The ceiling stretched upward, a black expanse that wasn't there before. The walls closed in, then expanded. Echoes of his own footsteps multiplied, coming from directions that defied physics. Every shadow was alive, every reflection a lie. You wanted this, Alex. You came back. You wanted to see him dead. He could see Ethan's face in every surface, the steel, the puddles, the broken glass. Every step forward was like walking through memory itself, through guilt, shame, and fear made solid. He saw moments he had blocked out. A fight with his sister, the day he abandoned a friend in the snow, the night he laughed when someone else suffered. And all of it was projected in front of him, mocking him, testing him. Alex stumbled into a wider chamber. The orange glow from the mysterious door behind him now painted everything in shifting, impossible colors, deep red puddles on the floor that reflected the ceiling upside down, walls that seemed to breathe in and out, pulsing with memories. And there, in the center, Ethan, or the thing, stood. But not fully. Its skin flickered between human and something else, root-like veins running under translucent flesh, like the facility itself had grown him as part of its organism. Its eyes were infinite, staring into Alex's soul, seeing every lie, every betrayal. You can't leave, the creature whispered. Not now. Not ever. Alex felt himself collapse to the ground. The air thickened, sticky, oppressive. The memories around him pressed in like a living tide. Faces he loved and feared combined into impossible shapes, whispering, crying, laughing. He couldn't tell what was real anymore. He tried to close his eyes, but the visions didn't stop. They moved behind his eyelids, weaving in and out of his thoughts. Every mistake, every lost opportunity, every what-if from his past, it all coalesced into a single, unbearable weight. And then he heard another voice. Quiet. Beneath all the others. Almost gentle. Look at me, Alex. He forced his eyes open. It was Ethan, his real friend, alive, or at least the part of him that had survived before the mimic took over, trapped in a pod in the corner. Pale, weak, barely moving, but eyes wide and terrified. Alex's stomach lurched. There was a way to reach him, to save him, but the mimic, the hallucinations, the corridor itself, all fought to prevent him. Alex realized then, the facility didn't just want him dead. It wanted his mind. His guilt, his regrets, every memory it could twist into a weapon. The creature had learned him perfectly, and now it was using everything he was against him. And yet, he had a choice. A single, fragile choice. One decision between facing all of it and giving up. Between confronting the mimic and risking his sanity, or succumbing to the hallucinations and being lost forever in the corridors that were no longer real. He clenched his fists, teeth gritting. I won't leave him, he whispered. The words felt weak, trembling. But as soon as he spoke them, the orange light flared, and the shadows recoiled slightly. The whispers stuttered. The corridors seemed to resist the pull of the hallucinations for the first time. Alex took a shaky step forward. The mimic mirrored him. And then, he remembered something, a memory from childhood, something pure, unbroken. A single, untainted moment of courage, of defiance. It surged through him, a bright pulse against the suffocating darkness. He took another step. And another. The orange glow of the pod beckoned. The corridor screamed, but Alex kept moving. The real fight had begun. Part 3, Segment 1. The Heart of the Hollow. Alex's footsteps echoed hollowly as he entered the lower chamber, the oppressive orange glow from the pods now pulsating like a heartbeat. Every inch of the air felt thick, heavy, saturated with the metallic tang of iron and the acrid stench of decay. The corridor behind him seemed to fold into itself, swallowing the mimic, his own shadow, and even the memory of the steps he had taken. He could no longer distinguish what had been real, what had been hallucination, and what the facility itself had created to torment him. Ahead, the pod holding Ethan sat under a web of cables, wires like veins connecting him to the humming chamber. The creature, the mimic, lingered closer now, twisting its form in impossible ways, skin rippling as if liquid and solid at the same time. Its eyes, hollow yet infinite, followed every movement Alex made. He could almost feel the creature's awareness crawling into his mind, sifting through fear and guilt like a predator hunting prey. "You cannot save him," the mimic whispered, voice layered with hundreds of tones. "Every choice you make is already mine. Every step you take. I am there." Alex swallowed hard, forcing his mind to focus. The whispers, the faceless memories, the accusations, they pressed against him, demanding surrender. He closed his eyes for a moment and tried to steady his breathing. He had to remember what was real. He had to remember Ethan. The real Ethan. Alive. Waiting. He wasn't going to let this thing consume him or his friend. Opening his eyes, he scanned the chamber. The pods were arranged in a semicircle around a blackened machine, pulsing with energy that seemed to ripple through the floor. Cables stretched like roots from the machine into the walls, the ceiling, even into the pods themselves. It was a core. The heart. Whatever this place was, the machine had become the anchor point for the horrors he'd seen. The mimic's body rippled unnaturally, its form stretching, elongating, then collapsing, like it was testing the limits of physics. It advanced toward him, each step silent, deliberate. The floor beneath it seemed to warp with its presence, bending reality, so that Alex felt as though he were moving through thick water with every step he took forward. Alex clenched his fists. He had no weapons. No shield. Only his will, his fear, and the faint memory of courage that had carried him through the previous horrors. He forced himself forward, each step a defiance. "You cannot," the mimic hissed. "You are nothing without your fears. You are nothing without your memories. And they are mine." Alex paused. And for the first time, he realized something critical. The mimic's power came from belief, from fear, from allowing it to dictate reality. It had no power over him if he refused to acknowledge it. The whispers, the faceless accusations, the twisting corridors, they were extensions of his own mind, drawn out by the creature's will. He took a deep breath and spoke aloud, not to anyone, not to the mimic, but to himself. "You are not real. None of this is real. I am here. I am not afraid." The effect was immediate. The shadows convulsed and shrieked, as if in pain. The corridors ceased their endless folding, snapping back into familiar, tangible angles. The oppressive air lightened slightly. The orange glow pulsed slower, less aggressively. The mimic recoiled, its form unstable now, flickering between solid and translucent, writhing like smoke in a storm. Its eyes bore into him, unblinking, infinite. "You will pay," it rasped, a distorted chorus of hundreds of voices layered with anguish and rage. Alex advanced. He ignored the twisting shapes behind him, the shifting faces of his own memories. He focused on Ethan. The real Ethan. Alive. In the pod. He placed a trembling hand on the glass. Ethan blinked, weakly. A faint, exhausted smile formed on his lips. That was enough. That was his anchor. He had to reach the core. The machine. Whatever powered this place, whatever connected the pods to the mimic's consciousness. If he could destroy it, sever the anchor, maybe the creature could be expelled, maybe Ethan could be freed. He turned away from the pod. The mimic lunged, a fluid, horrifying blow of sinew, roots, and pulsing flesh. Its movement was almost impossible to track. But Alex did not run. He faced it. He did not flinch. He shouted, "I am not afraid of you." The mimic recoiled again, its form cracking like glass. Its voice, 1,000 layered tones, screeched in pain. "No one defies me." Alex seized the opportunity. He sprinted toward the machine, ignoring the searing pain in his lungs, the trembling of his legs, the hallucinations that still tried to reach him. With every step, the whispers screamed, faces twisted in rage, memories assaulted him, but he pressed on. He could hear Ethan faintly calling, urging him forward, a tether of hope anchoring Alex to reality. When he reached the machine, he saw the core, a pulsating, black crystalline structure, veins of energy lacing outward into the cables that connected the pods. The mimic hovered near it, writhing, screaming, trying to maintain its connection. Alex grabbed a length of exposed conduit and rammed it into the crystal. Sparks flew, the room lit in violent bursts of blue and orange light. The mimic screamed, not with a human voice, but with the chorus of every soul it had mimicked, every memory it had twisted. The chamber shook violently, cables snapping, pods rattling. Ethan's pod cracked, and Alex could see the boy struggling to free himself. He hit the crystal again, harder this time, and it split, sending a shockwave through the chamber. The mimic convulsed, losing cohesion. Roots, veins, and flesh tore apart. The whispers shrieked in unison, a deafening, tortured sound that threatened to shatter his mind. But Alex held on, focusing only on the broken pod and the friend trapped inside. The pulse of the machine slowed, then ceased. Silence fell. The orange glow vanished. Shadows receded. For the first time since entering the facility, Alex could breathe freely. Ethan gasped as the pod doors fell open, his legs weak, but he was alive. He struggled to his feet, blinking at Alex with gratitude and disbelief. Alex exhaled, collapsing against the floor. His hands shook. His chest heaved. The mimic was gone, or at least, expelled. For now. He looked at Ethan. We are getting out. Now? But even as he spoke, a low hum began to resonate beneath the floor. A single whisper, familiar, faint, but unmistakable. "You think it's over?" Alex froze. The facility was not done with them. Segment 2. The Hollow wakes. The moment Alex helped Ethan out of the cracked pod, the chamber shuddered violently. A low rumble began beneath the concrete floor, vibrating through their bones, carrying a resonance that seemed to echo directly into their skulls. The pods, now broken and lifeless, rattled with residual energy. And from the depths of the facility, a new sound arose, the unmistakable pulse of the hollow itself. It was not mechanical, not alive in any human sense. It was the earth, the metal, the walls, and the memories it had stolen and twisted. A heartbeat, deep, slow, insistent, rising in volume until it seemed to shake the air apart. The orange glow returned, suffusing the chamber, not from the pods, but from the walls themselves, veins of light tracing the corridors like black roots glowing from within. Alex grabbed Ethan's arm. "We have to move, now." The mimic was gone. For the moment. But the thing that had animated the pods, that had toyed with his mind, was nothing compared to the entity awakening beneath the facility, the hollow. The walls bulged. The ceiling stretched upward. The floor cracked, exposing veins of black, root-like matter crawling outward like living shadows. A whisper, many whispers, rose from the cracks. Some were Ethan's, some Alex's own memories, some voices from the past, his mother, his childhood friends, ghosts of mistakes long buried, all combining into a single, torturous chorus. "You cannot leave. You cannot survive. We are all one." Alex felt bile rise in his throat. Every step they took forward seemed to multiply the voices, each echoing memory twisting into another horror. He had no weapon, no plan beyond moving toward the surface. But instinct, fear, and guilt propelled him forward. Ethan stumbled, pale, weak. It's everywhere. Alex nodded, gripping his friend's shoulder. I know. We have to get out before it, he didn't finish. He couldn't. The air itself seemed to pulse with anticipation, drawing a rhythm from their terror. Then the floor opened beneath them. Not collapsing, not crumbling, but splitting apart in sections, revealing a cavity beneath. From that darkness, roots shot upward, thick, black, coated in soil and decay, sprouting like skeletal hands reaching for them. Alex yanked Ethan back, and they ran along the corridor, slipping past tendrils that twisted at their ankles, trying to pull them down. The facility itself was alive now, reacting to their movement, reshaping, closing paths, pushing them toward one inevitable end, the heart of the hollow. They stumbled into a large central chamber. And there it was, the black oak, impossibly large, pulsating, veins of black roots extending from its trunk into the floor, ceiling, and walls. The air was thick with the scent of wet soil and burnt metal. The tree seemed alive, sentient, and it thrummed with the same heartbeat that had haunted Alex since the first pod. The whispers became clearer, sharper. Not voices. Commands. Demands. Threats. One soul for another. One sacrifice. One choice. Only one can leave. Alex froze. The tree's shadow stretched, reaching toward them like a living tide. And then he saw them, dozens of figures, moving in the blackened wheat-like shadows that had infiltrated the room. Faces of loved ones, distorted, twisted, mocking. His mother, Ethan's missing childhood friend, his own self at 10 years old, mimics created to ensnare him, to distract, to terrify. Ethan gasped. Alex, what do we do? Alex's hands shook. His throat burned with dry screams he refused to release. He forced his mind to focus. The hollow feeds on fear, feeds on memory, feeds on guilt. If he could stop reacting, maybe they had a chance. A figure stepped forward from the shadows, a mimic of Alex himself, 10 years old, holding a toy rifle he had cherished as a child. It smiled, wide and knowing. You're scared. You always were. Alex gritted his teeth, forcing himself to meet the child's gaze. I am not scared of you. The mimic recoiled, the shadow twisting, breaking apart in confusion. The hollow pulsed harder, almost angrily. The figures around it shrieked in unison, voices layered with accusation. Alex grabbed Ethan. We have to destroy it, now. It's the core, the roots. Ethan nodded weakly. He didn't know how, but he trusted Alex. Together, they advanced toward the oak. Roots lashed out, slamming against walls, floor, even the two of them, each strike twisting the air with whispers of all the past horrors Alex had endured. Alex saw it, a section of the tree's trunk thinner, glowing brighter. A hollow cavity where he could strike. His mind raced, fire. Always fire. That had worked in the past. If they could ignite the heart, sever the roots, maybe the entity could be contained. Ethan hesitated. We can't both. No, Alex cut him off. One of us has to draw its attention. I'll do it. His hands trembled. He felt the weight of sacrifice pressing down, familiar from the memories of all those he couldn't save. But this time, he had a plan. He had courage, too, or whatever remained of it. The roots whipped around them like snakes. Alex drew in a deep breath and screamed, not at the hollow, not at the mimics, but through his own memory, confronting every fear and regret in his mind. He screamed it, and the sound carried, ripping through the chamber, breaking the rhythm of the hollow's pulse, creating a crack, a fissure in its focus. It reacted. The roots lunged, shadows lashed, the mimics screamed. But Alex held his ground. He poured every ounce of defiance into one act, lunging at the cavity in the tree with the lighter fluid they had scavenged from the old labs, pouring it carefully, igniting a single match, and tossing it into the heart of the oak. Blue fire erupted, not ordinary fire, but something supernatural, glowing like the aurora in molten waves. The oak shrieked in agony, roots writhing violently, and the mimics screamed in layered unison. The hollow pulsed faster, then began to collapse inward on itself. The chamber shook violently, stones and cables crashing to the floor. Ethan covered his face as heat and light consumed the room. The blue flames spread along the roots, up the trunk, into the ceiling, illuminating horrors that had been hidden in the shadows for decades. The tree thrashed, trying to maintain its hold, but the fire was purifying, disrupting its connection to the memories it had stolen. Alex felt a sharp pain in his left side, a root piercing his shoulder, black ichor dripping into his veins. He gritted his teeth, refusing to scream, knowing the pain anchored him in reality. The fire raged higher. One more pulse, one last attempt to reclaim its hold. Then, silence. The flames died, the shadows dissolved, the whispers vanished. The chamber was charred, blackened, but still solid. And in the center, the oak was reduced to a smoldering stump, its roots twisted but lifeless. Ethan collapsed beside Alex. Is it gone? Alex shook, face pale, hands blooded, one eye starting to swell from the heat. For now, he whispered. For now. And yet, beneath the scorched floor, a faint pulsing remained, a reminder that the hollow was not fully destroyed. Its heartbeat lingered, subtle, waiting. Watching. Patient. Segment 3. The Last Sacrifice. The chamber was silent, save for the faint crackle of the dying blue flames licking the charred remains of the hollow's heart. Dust hung thick in the air, settling over the scorched roots like ash from a funeral pyre. Alex's lungs burned as he struggled to inhale, his legs shaking beneath him, but he forced himself upright. Ethan lay collapsed against the far wall, weak, bruised, trembling. For a fleeting moment, Alex dared to imagine that it was over. Then he felt it. A subtle, almost imperceptible tremor beneath his feet. The pulse, faint but unmistakable, the heartbeat of the hollow. It was still alive, buried beneath the soil and roots, and it was angry. Alex staggered forward, gripping his shoulder where the root had pierced, black ichor staining his fingers. Ethan, get out of here, he gasped. It's not over. Not yet. Ethan blinked up at him, wide-eyed, barely able to speak. What do we do? Alex shook his head, vision blurred, teeth gritting. He could feel it watching him, every fear, every memory exposed, feeding the final threads of its consciousness. The hollow had learned him completely. It had learned all of them. And now, the only way to stop it was sacrifice. A choice. One life to end countless others. You have to leave, he said. I'll finish this. Ethan opened his mouth to argue, but Alex shook him off gently, almost tenderly. If you try to stay, it'll take both of us. The floor beneath them cracked, black roots surging upward like tentacles, twisting and writhing as if alive. The whispers returned, soft at first, then rising into a crescendo of tortured voices, faces of the dead Whitlocks, distorted, screaming, crying, laughing, taunting him. The hollow's consciousness stretched through every crack, every shadow, every memory in the facility. Alex limped forward to the stump of the black oak. Even in its charred, broken state, the center pulsed faintly, glowing with the same unnatural blue energy. The hollow's core was still there, alive, sentient, waiting. It knew what he was planning. It wanted him to hesitate. He grabbed the lighter fluid and the last match from his pocket. The shadows of the room seemed to lean toward him, reaching, grasping, whispering. You can't stop us. You never could. Alex forced himself to ignore them. He focused on the core, on the blue light, on the heartbeat of the thing he had to destroy. Every step toward it was a battle against fear itself, every breath a defiance against the chorus of the dead. He poured the lighter fluid over the stump, carefully coating every blackened root he could reach. The shadows shivered, the whispers rising to a shriek, voices led like a chorus of 1,000 tormented souls. Alex struck the match. The flame leapt, alive, shimmering unnaturally blue, as it caught the lighter fluid. He tossed it onto the core. The fire spread instantly, engulfing the stump, climbing the roots, reaching into the corners of the room. The hollow scream, if such a thing could be called a scream, was deafening. It was the voice of everyone and no one. 1,000 layered cries piercing Alex's mind. Pain shot through his ears, blood seeping from his nose and ears as the sound tore at the membranes of his skull. But he didn't stop. He poured the last of the fluid onto himself and the roots at his feet, knowing what had to be done. He wrapped himself around the trunk of the burning oak. The fire leapt onto his clothes, searing his flesh, but he held on. His body a conduit, a sacrifice to the flame, to the only thing that could consume the hollow's heart. The entity fought back with everything it had. Roots lashed, tendrils of black energy tried to pull him under, whispers screamed threats, accusations, memories, all bending the air into shapes of terror. And yet, Alex held on, screaming his defiance into the storm of sound, into the heart of the living nightmare. The flames blazed higher. The blue fire reflected in the roots, climbing up and consuming them, consuming the black ichor veins, consuming the consciousness of the hollow. Shadows writhed violently, mimics of the dead screaming, some of them Alex's own memory made flesh, reaching, clawing, begging for recognition. Ethan screamed from the far wall. Alex! No! Alex's vision blurred. Pain racked his body, smoke filled his lungs. His hands burned as he tightened his grip on the stump. One eye was swollen shut, face blistering. And then, finally, he felt it. The pulse weakening. The heartbeat fading. The fire consuming the last of the entity's consciousness. The hollow shrieked, a sound that combined every voice in the Whitlock lineage, twisted into a single, unbearable wail. And then silence. Blue flames died. Smoke curled into the air. The chamber was black, charred, silent. Alex hung limply over the stump, gasping, body badly burned, skin peeling, eyes half blind. The hollow was gone. Ethan ran to him, cradling him in his arms. Alex, you're alive. Alex coughed, smoke choking him. Barely, but it's over. For a moment, they believed it. Then a faint movement beneath the ash caught Alex's eye. A root twitched. A black tendril shifted beneath the scorched floor. And the radio in the corner, a relic he hadn't noticed, flickered to life. Static first, then a familiar voice. A child's voice. 10 years old. Alex's own voice. Don't trust the survivor. Uncle Alex. I'm down here. I'm hungry. Alex's stomach sank. The hollow was not gone. Not entirely. Somehow, some remnant remained, patient, waiting, insidious. He looked at Ethan, burned, battered, alive. We have to leave. Now? Ethan nodded.